Welcome back to yet another discussion on some of the most important history topics that could find their way to your 2024 prelims examination. This video discusses a crucial topic related to the Mughals. First, let's divulge the reasons for taking up this topic by looking at the headlines. The temple that Aurangzeb razed, evidence from history on Gyanvapi and Kashi Vishwanath. The ASI has said it has relied on scientific studies and observations. There is also ample textual evidence that supports its conclusion. So, I shall take this moment to explain to you about the crux of this controversy. So, if you see, this news article discusses the historical evidence surrounding the demolition of the Kashi Vishwanath temple by the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. So the temple is located in the city of Varanasi, okay? And this temple is considered to be one of the holiest sites for Hindus. And this temple has undergone destruction and rebuilding several times throughout this course of history. Okay, so this article, which appeared in the New Hindu Indian Express newspaper in January of 2024, presents archaeological records and historical accounts that support Aurangzeb that basically support the theory that Aurangzeb razed the temple in the 17th century and constructed a mosque known as Gyanvapi in its place. Okay, so the whole idea is that in the 17th century, Aurangzeb razed parts of this temple to bring up this mosque called Gyanvapi. So one of the sources of evidence is a book written by Kavi Ratan Singh. Who's this Kavi Ratan Singh? Kavi Ratan Singh was a courtier of Aurangzeb who mentioned the temple's destruction. And this article also cites a report by British colonial administrator James Prinsep, who excavated the site and found remnants of a temple under the mosque. Okay, and you can also find references from historical texts like Sanskrit narrative Kashikand and the Persian text Masir-e-Alamgiri that suggest the destruction of the temple. So keep these important Sanskrit narratives and texts in your mind. Sanskrit narrative Kashikand and Persian text Masi-e-Alamgiri. These two works suggest the destruction of the temple, and the person I already told you who wrote a book was Kavi Ratan Singh. He was a courtier of Aurangzeb who mentions the temple's destruction. The name of the person who excavated the remnants of a temple under the mosque was James Prinsep. Okay, remember James Prinsep? James Prinsep was the one who deciphered the Ashokan Brahmi script in 1837. Okay, so the issue of Kashi Vishwanath temple's demolition and subsequent construction of the Gyanvapi has been a subject of legal and religious disputes in recent times. Okay, so on the whole, this article in the Indian Express concludes by highlighting the importance of acknowledging historical evidence and promoting an informed and respectful dialogue to resolve such disputes. Okay, so in the wake of this dispute, Aurangzeb has once again come to the forefront. He has once again gained popularity. Okay, so I think it will be prudent for me to explain about Aurangzeb, the last powerful Mughal emperor. So who was this Aurangzeb? So as we all know, Aurangzeb was born in 1618 in a place called Dohad. So this Dohad is on the Gujarat Rajputana frontier. Okay, so he had the distinction of becoming the sixth ruler of the Mughal Empire, and the title that Aurangzeb assumed was Alamgir. Alamgir means conqueror of the world. Okay, so he came to power in 1658, and in 1664 he issued an edict that forbade the practice of sati, which is the self-immolation of widows on their husband's funeral pyre. And Aurangzeb was also known for his puritanical religious views, and he was influenced by Naqshbandi Sufi order. Okay, keep this in mind. So Aurangzeb, Alamgir, influenced by the Naqshbandi Sufi order. So you have to look at the various Sufi orders as well. So in terms of economic policies, Aurangzeb is known for abolishing inland transport duty, which was 10% tax on the value of goods, and the um, uh, taxes on food and drinks that were brought into the cities for sale. Okay, so he did all this during his period. These are the things that you have to remember Aurangzeb for. Okay, now what are the other aspects of Aurangzeb that you will lay an emphasis on? The first is the politico-military aspects of his rule. So if you say Aurangzeb ruled a large part of India than any previous monarch, but he faced difficulties in the latter part of his reign. In fact, if you see, revolts by the Jats, Satnamis, and Sikhs were driven by politico-economic reasons rather than religious factors. Many people contend that Aurangzeb faced a lot of disturbances because of his religious policies. That's not the only reason. There were other reasons as well for which his empire faced a lot of disturbance. Okay, so the issues raised by Jats, Satnamis, and Sikhs were merely from a political point of view. And not only that, he had his confrontations with the British as well. Okay, so Aurangzeb basically confronted the British by seizing their Surat factory due to English piracy and control of the pilgrim trade. Okay, and then we remember him till today for his Deccan policy, which led to his undoing. So if you see, Aurangzeb's Deccan policy aimed to contain Maratha influence and suppress rebellious kingdoms like Golconda and Bijapur. So his campaigns in the Deccan resulted in direct conflict with the Marathas and drained the Mughal treasury, from which the latter Mughals were not able to recover. In fact, Shivaji, the Maratha leader, resisted the Mughal forces and the conflict continued after Aurangzeb's death. In fact, Shivaji turned out to be a thorn in the flesh of Aurangzeb. Fine. And talking about his religious policies, Aurangzeb established Sharia law and Islamic economics throughout the Indian subcontinent. He went on to ban drinking and singing in court, and he restricted certain celebrations and abolished practices like weighing the emperor with gold and Jaroka Darshan. So try to find out what this Jaroka Darshan was. And during his period, he did not patronize art, architecture, or any forms of literature, because many of the artists left his court and they just went to provincial kingdoms. In fact, the jizya tax was reintroduced for non-Muslims, but exemptions existed for economically weaker sections of the society as well. But that's something that we don't concentrate on. We simply study that jizya tax was imposed, but there were some exemptions as well. Okay, so Aurangzeb prohibited astrologers and the use of firecrackers and fireworks as well. And coming to the context of this particular news article, we have to look at his policy of abolishing temples or destroying temples. So while Aurangzeb was the ruler, he did not basically allow the construction of new temples. In fact, long-standing temples and religious structures were sometimes exempted. Okay, sometimes long-standing temples and religious structures were allowed to make some additions. Okay, and he demolished the Somnath temple due to political opposition. And moreover, Aurangzeb disliked the practice of Hindus and Muslims visiting temples, ordering measures to prohibit temple visits by Muslims. So as a result, the Vishwanath temple in Benares and Keshavrai temple in Mathura were destroyed and were replaced by mosques. There were certain contexts. Okay, we need to understand why he did those destructions from the context of, from the socio-political context of the time that he lived in. Okay, simply we are not supposed to look at this as a general approach of Aurangzeb towards temple destruction. He had certain things happening during that time from a societal and political point of view that only led him to destroying certain temples. Okay, so these are the areas you will concentrate on. So precise and to the point information can be found in the Optima card on the screen. Okay, so for accessing it, you can contact the number in the bottom of the Optima card. Okay, so now let's look into the allied areas you will touch upon while preparing about the Mughals. The first area that you're supposed to prepare is the Afghan versus Rajput versus Mughal rivalry. So if you see, the Afghans and Rajputs were powerful kingdoms in India before the rise of the Mughal Empire. So the Mughals were led by Babur, and they defeated Delhi Sultanate last ruler Ibrahim Lodi, and this Delhi Sultanate was dominated by Afghans. Okay, so these Rajputs initially resisted Mughal rule, but eventually formed alliances with Mughals through political marriages. It happened especially during the time of Akbar. So you will have to look at their confrontation and conflicts. Then in the middle, there was the rise of the Sood dynasty. So the Sood dynasty rose to power after defeating the second Mughal emperor Humayun in 1540. So the person you're supposed to look into is Sher Shah Sood, the founder of the Sood dynasty. Okay, he implemented significant administrative reforms in the areas of revenue, military, and governance. And then, most important thing is the political history of the Mughals. So the Mughal Empire reached its peak during the reign of Akbar, who expanded the empire and implemented religious and administrative reforms. And after Akbar, Jahangir and Shah Jahan focused more on cultural developments and they constructed iconic monuments like the Taj Mahal. And then comes Aurangzeb. His reign marked a period of religious conservatism and increased conflicts with other regional powers as well. So concentrate from Babur to Aurangzeb. More questions are asked from that perspective. And then Mughal administration, that's in the next area you will touch upon. So this Mughal empire had a centralized administration with a hierarchical structure. Okay, the emperor held supreme power and was assisted by important officials like the Wazir, Mir Bakshi and Diwan. So if you see, Mansabdars were military commanders who held administrative posts and were granted ranks known as Mansabs. This was a very important topic that you'll have to touch upon with regards to administration, the Mansabdari system. And Deccan policy of the Mughals is another important area. So the Deccan was a region in southern India with rich kingdoms and sometimes experienced conflicts with the Mughals. Okay, so Aurangzeb's Deccan campaigns aimed to subdue rebellious kingdoms like Golconda and Bijapur, but were costly and weakened the empire. In fact, the last 25 years of his life, Aurangzeb spent completely in Deccan, neglecting the northern part of his kingdom, which weakened the Mughal empire. Okay, and then Mughal rulers and their religious policy is another area that you will touch upon. Okay, so Akbar practiced religious tolerance and established a syncretic faith known as Din Ilahi, which included the good points from all the major religions that existed at that point of time. And then Jahangir and Shah Jahan followed a more orthodox Sunni Islam, but allowed freedom of worship. But Aurangzeb implemented stricter policies, including reintroducing the jizya tax and prohibiting certain Hindu practices. This is another important area. And then coming over to the next topic that you have to learn is Mughal art, architecture and literature. So Mughal art and architecture blended Persian, Islamic and Indian styles known for intricate designs and use of marbles. So iconic structures including the Taj Mahal, Red Fort and Jama Masjid were built by the Mughals. And moreover, the Mughal rulers patronized Persian and Indian literature, which resulted in works like the Akbarnama and the poetry of Mirza Ghalib. So these are certain areas that you will touch upon. And finally, talking about the decline of the Mughals. The decline started after Aurangzeb's death, with weak successors and challenges from regional powers. So the Maratha Empire and other kingdoms gained power, which weakened the Mughal control. Okay, so European powers like the British and French took advantage of the declining empire and they established their presence in India. Okay, so these are the areas that you will always lay or emphasis on when you are preparing about the Mughals. Okay, so that's it from our discussion for the day. For aspirants taking up prelims 2024, we have covered most of these topics in our Lakshya 2024 program. So you can go through them by following the link in the description. For laying your hands on our Optima cards, you can contact the number that you saw in the bottom of the card. So we run a current affairs session in the weekends. So for up-to-date knowledge on current developments, you can join our weekend session. So keep supporting us. Only then you will receive more such videos like this and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.